Good morning, everybody. Mental health professional Darren Cox is our very special guest today, Thursday, December 5th, 2024. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live, presented by Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin. AFP Wisconsin works to reignite the American dream and break down government barriers that hold us back from our full potential. Learn more at americansforprosperity.org and join AFP to fight for more freedom for all Wisconsinites. Today we welcome back to the show the wisest of them all, mental health professional and owner of Anchor Bay Counseling, Darren Cox. Darren, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ben.
How are you?
I'm good. You always do a great job of, shining me up before you put me on air. So that's good. So
You are. Well, we've known each other for, a number of years. We know. First, let's back up here. Darren,
yes.
what brings you on the show today?
Well, how do you pass up a invite from the great Benjamin Dryden? I mean, it's pretty hard. So, does your mom ever call you Benjamin?
Not really. When I was young, of course, when I got in trouble.
You got in trouble.
But, yeah, and I was in trouble a lot.
Okay.
But no, nobody ever calls me Benjamin. Now I think about it.
Okay. I'm gonna have to start.
You can be the first.
Okay. All right. As long as you won't be offended by that. But yeah,
I don't get offended by
anything.
anything.
Thought of your mom with you being in trouble. So.
Yeah. Is that one of the first questions you ask when somebody comes in? Right. That would be, normal question. How do you want to be referred to as?
Not necessarily, unless there's a nick, like a Robert or a Bob or something along those lines. But
Sure.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I wanted to kind of make it seem as though, you're on the sofa. What brought you in today?
So we're flipping the roles.
That's what I was going for. Really,
Okay.
just for humor. So, it's your 45 minutes. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I keep having this recurrent dream that I'm stuck in a box. So.
Okay, that's a tough one. What? Okay, hold on. Is that an actual thing? Have you ever heard that before?
Well, last time I was on, we were talking. I said it was Phil Hartman, but it was actually. I'm going to draw a blank on the guy's name now that did the skit. Where he's a psychiatrist and he's talking to a woman whose fear is that she's stuck in a box. And his famous Bob Newhart, that's who I'm thinking of. His famous input to her was just stop it. Just stop it. I thought, man, that's pretty wise.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
Give me your money and get out of here.
Pretty much. And you set a timer. So those are things that you never want to do as a therapist, ever.
Set a timer? Why not a timer?
Oh, man, because then you're going to make people feel like, they're in a rush or, you never want to get caught looking at your watch or looking at a clock because it tells people that you're disinterested. So
that's how much longer you have to talk.
All right, go.
Tell me your problems and go.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of misconceptions about what happens in therapy. We hold hands, sing kumbaya. I do have a couch, but it's more of a short, love seat. So that's not,
Not a laying down thing.
No.
So is that a misconception? Let's start there. What are some of the misconceptions? That's one of them.
I think it's harder stereotypically for men to embrace therapy more than women. Probably 90% of my clients are women. Men talking about emotions it's viewed as a sign of weakness, oftentimes, particularly in some of our, the northern industrial hardworking culture that, we live in. So, that's definitely one of them.
But that's not a misconception though. Right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's more of a, that's probably an accurate perception,
Yeah, well, actually, that surprised me a little bit, just considering the climate that we're in and where we have gotten to as a society. I know I've talked to, Sheriff Brent Walk and Sheriff Tracy Finch and Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald about, like, law enforcement. It used to be, you don't want to go and talk to somebody, but they see some horrific things, dude. Wow, it's a very difficult profession to be in. And we've talked about that stigma of, do you go and see? And they've all said, no, it's much more like we embrace that as well. And we encourage it, but we not encourage it, but we provide all of that. And it's kind of gone away. It's not like it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. So I'm actually a little surprised by that. I thought that where we are in a society today, more men would be open to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just look at the percentages of men versus women with who's
Hmm.
seeking out therapy, it's still very skewed one direction. Now, I will say this for, law enforcement, EMT, firefighters, there are folks around here that specialize in providing therapy for that particular group. They've got law enforcement background, training with specific issues that, those fields face. And I think that helps a tremendous amount too, because they feel understood. People get what it's like to be in that field to do
Yeah.
that job, which makes it much easier to connect.
What are some of the trends? Let's talk trends in your profession. Let's start with just from a patient. I don't even refer to my patient clients, like you don't just call them like crazies and whack jobs and whatever. So patients, is that how it's you categorize someone that comes in to see you?
Yeah, for the most part, it's clients.
Clients, got it. All right, so client, yeah, that makes more sense. So whether it's your offices in Spooner or at Ladysmith and any other people that are there as well, providing mental health, but maybe you also sign up for, I don't know, newsletters in your profession, or you know a lot of things that are going on in the profession. But kind of as a whole, what trends are you seeing? Like compare it to like 5 years ago to where you are now. What's different?
Well, the demand for mental health services is higher than at any point in time that I've seen it. I started in the field in 2001, and things are dramatically different as far as demand for services. I think it's harder and harder to get people in that call. I mean, one of the worst parts of my week is when people call trying to get help and you don't have a place to put them. There's just not rooms. The demand is significantly increased, and that's our post COVID world that we live in.
Sure. So was
So
that a
how are we?
significant factor, like a contributing factor, was the COVID part?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Society absolutely changed after COVID. So no doubt about it.
And your profession
Particularly,
did significantly.
say that again.
Your profession changed significantly because of COVID.
Just with the demand,
Really?
Yep, yep.
Why?
So, well, I mean, it was such a time of unknown, a time of lack of trust, a time of misinformation, disinformation. People didn't know where to turn, what to do. I think more than anything, the biggest thing that we see is the impact on our kids and how it impacted, social learning, how it impacted the classroom. Some of the kids that, got behind due to, when we weren't in school and we were doing online learning, which, for my kids, that was a great excuse to take a nap, with online learning. Um, so, we're seeing the ramifications of that for sure with our kids right now. So when you
It's
talk about trends,
well,
we're the impact on our kids is definitely one of the biggest things.
and you're still seeing that now. Do you think this is going to go away, or is this going to be a long term, like in next year when you come on, right? Because you seem to come on like once a year, and I ask you the same question, and is it going to be trending down at that point, or no? This is going to have some long lasting effects.
Well, yeah, I see it continuing. And the reason I see it continuing is that, the social media and the electronics piece of what's impacting our kids, that's not going away. That cat's out of the bag. That's not changing. And, as we're taking a deeper dive into what's going on with our kids, why are we seeing these things showing up behaviorally in the classroom? What is causing this dramatic increase and
Hmm.
particularly anxiety amongst our kids?
Yeah.
And what they've found is that there's two key components that we're seeing. Is number one, an over parentification in key areas with kids. So we don't allow our kids to have like unstructured play, free time outside. I mean, running through the woods, building tree forts. There's just this. We've all heard of the helicopter parent.
Yeah.
The parent that does, that oftentimes will parent out of fear, and they're fearful of what their kids are going to happen to them. So they have a tendency to hover over them. And, there's enough research out there to support how important it is for kids to have unstructured play, use their imagination, not be tied to electronics. So we see, an over parentification in that area. And then an under parentification in like social media and electronics. My generation, I literally didn't have a computer until I think I was in like 8th grade. That's when they showed up in our schools. So I'm a technological idiot, truly. When something needs to be downloaded or fixed or we buy a new phone, I call the kids. So parents, I think, at least from my generation, have kind of checked out a little bit on what their kids are exposed to, what their kids are involved in, and it's those two factors that they're identifying that's influencing the amount of anxiety that our kids are dealing with.
Now, are parents aware of this, or do you think they are aware of? They're aware of it, but they don't realize that they're aware of it until it is kind of presented to them, and they go, "That makes so much sense." Because I've seen these certain behaviors in my kids, and I never actually identified what that was, but that totally makes sense.
Yeah, unfortunately, awareness comes many times when something has happened, like the
Yeah.
kid's in trouble or been exposed to something they shouldn't be. Some of it's willful ignorance. Just what I don't know ain't going to hurt me. And when it comes to what our kids are exposed to, I think the more we understand and more we educate ourselves, the better the outcomes are going to be. So,
I think the greatest compliment I could give another man is simply to say that they're a good man.
mm,
And Darren, you're a good man, and I mean that sincerely. I respect you so much as a mental health professional, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, but also your faith. And you're very real about your faith. How does that impact your ability to do your job? Actually, let me ask you it this way. Is it easier or harder to do your job because of your faith?
there are times it's hard, like when a relationship with somebody goes sideways, and it's not sideways because of anything that I feel like I've done wrong. My faith says I got to be the one that builds the bridge, that I got to be the first one to own it, that I got to apologize, even if it may not necessarily be something that, I did wrong. That can be hard sometimes because I like to be right, and again, I know it's pride, but the older I get, the more I really see that influencing, maintaining healthy relationships. Yeah. Am I willing to sacrifice my pride to be able to maintain a connection with somebody? So that one's been hard, particularly I've got older. If you'd asked me when I was 20, I'm like, nope, I'm right. I'm not backing up. There was, it just wasn't gonna happen. So, my faith definitely influences, I think, how I want to treat people. I want people to come into my office to feel like I care about them. And that you can't fake that, you can't, hey, how are you? Fine, take care now. People pick that up on that, and kids are really adept on that. You can't be a poser with kids.
No.
Yeah. So, if you're not real and genuine, with kids, they're going to see right through that, and then they're not going to want to come back. So,
Well, I know. Well, Dad was the sheriff, Darren Dryden, for 28 years, and he's a man of faith. But I don't think there's probably a lot of situations situations he had to deal with that he had to stop and go, I wonder what the Bible says about this.
mhm.
So I just don't think that necessarily that impacted him in terms of his profession. However, his character was certainly represented by his faith. That's 100%.
Yeah.
So is that similar for you, where it's the who I am, but it doesn't necessarily bleed into my profession? It's just that's what makes me who I am.
Well, I mean, in your dad's situation, when you're dealing with a a bad guy that's got a gun, what does the Bible say?
Right,
Duck, run, shoot back.
right.
Those type
Yeah,
of
it's
things. So,
somewhere in Ecclesiastes, I think, or something. I don't
right, right, right,
know.
right. Everything has a season, and it's my time to duck. Yeah. Um, so yeah, it's who I am. I want to represent that. I want to be a light, and I don't want to be a light when it's convenient. I hate hypocrites, and I don't want a hypocrite staring back at me in the morning when I'm looking in the mirror. So if there's not carryover, that's what an unbelieving world finds really hard to believe, is when somebody acts one way on Sunday and different the rest of the week.
Yeah, I
So,
think you and I have talked about that offline. That and it was hyperbole on my part. That I think like the greatest threat to Christianity isn't atheists or agnostics or other religions. It's actually
yeah,
Christians themselves. Like
yeah.
they're doing more damage to the Christian to Christians
Yeah.
than anybody else because
Yeah.
of what you just talked about.
Well, I heard somebody say one time that Christians are the only group that bury their wounded. And I thought, you know what, there's some merit to that.
I don't
How do we
understand
get,
that reference.
well, wounded, you're not dead yet, but oftentimes when people are hurting, they don't feel loved, accepted, embraced, forgiven, within sometimes the confines of a church. And that's what turns people off.
Mm,
It's one thing to respond, lovingly to somebody that's got it all together. How do you respond when they're struggling? When there's sin issues, when they're making mistakes that are having big time consequences,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. I think it's easier. It's easy certainly for people that are non-believers, and anything. It almost seems like if you do anything wrong at all, then they're going to criticize you, and because they kind of don't get it. And I think we kind of get that they don't get it.
Right.
That we're still sinners, right? We understand that part. We still make mistakes. We try not to live in sin, but
Right.
we're not perfect. But yeah, when a church itself, or just the umbrella term of the church, whether it's an actual physical location church or not, when you start getting that criticism instead of offering the hand for help, that I think that really turns people off. I really do.
Yeah. 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 We have to be careful with, how we respond so that people don't get turned off, because that's what you consistently hear is, the whole hypocrisy thing. And
Yeah,
in some cases that's hard to argue. Um, because there's enough evidence of that in history through the years. So.
yeah. But what about trends in the profession itself? Um, I'm assuming in your line of work you have to get certified and recertified, and I'm assuming just because of your line of work,
Mhm.
are there? And I don't know who kind of gives this direction. Maybe it's based on the trends of what your clients they're seeing more of in the mental health professional world, and therefore, okay, now we need to certify people in XYZ. Don't know if that's a thing. Let us know. But are there conflicting things for you where the trend in the mental health profession as a whole is going down a road where it's starting to conflict with your faith? Like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the case when you're a person of faith coming against things that don't line up with your faith. Some of the transgender ideology, particularly with our children, that's a hard one for me to be able to reconcile. The flip side of that is if you look at the mental health issues that are impacting that population, it's significant. It's very significant. So you want to be able to help without promoting. And to me,
Sure.
that's the key. How do I help without promote? Because if I'm promoting something, then there is the possibility that now it's coming into conflict with my faith,
Sure.
with my belief system
Sure.
versus helping.
So
So
it is true. So I've read stories, but you never really know. When you can create statistics, not create, but you can reference statistics, kind of like people will reference certain parts of the Bible without putting into context. You can find anything to support anything that you want to
oh sure,
prove.
yep.
So I never really know because I've read stuff about that, but I didn't know how accurate it was. Higher percentage of mental health, I wouldn't say issues, but whether it's suicide or other things for transgender, especially at the younger ages. But I don't know. I mean, it's a study. Well, I just don't know really where they get all this information from. But in your profession, you're saying that is true. There is more of those things happening to those
Yeah,
individuals.
the rate of depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, self-injurious behaviors is significantly higher for that population.
Oh,
And that's the heartbreaking part of it. This search for acceptance, this search for connection. How does society respond to things that are considered fringe? But yeah, no, there's a strong connection there. And from a faith standpoint, how do I bone up on that? How do I learn that?
yeah.
Without sacrificing again values. That's a dance. That's always going to be a dance, and you'll find people on both sides of it.
Sure.
Again, my biggest thing is I'm not going to promote one direction or the other. We've had parents that bring their children in and say, "Hey, you need to talk my kid out of this particular decision," and I'm like, that's not what we're here to do. I can help your kid with a coping skill standpoint. I can help your kid to make sure that are your decisions lining up with your values? Because if they're not, we're going to create tension. We're going to create conflict there. But yeah, that's sometime, the parents will bring the kid in and say, steer my kid. And we simply can't do that.
You can't do that, or you won't do that.
You run into some big ethical dilemmas if you're, steering somebody from a mental health standpoint, because then
Okay.
it's me injecting my belief system onto somebody else.
So how does that work with
Here's
your faith? I mean, if um, like a Buddha, well, like around our area, it's probably more likely for agnostic or an atheist. Rather, I don't think we have a significantly high, Muslim community, for example, like the people that you see here in rural North Wisconsin, and they come in and say, "Listen, I went on your website and I saw your stuff about you're a Bible thumper or whatever. So if you bring up God, dude, I'm bouncing. Like you cannot bring that up. And is that for you? Like totally fine. Or for you, is
perfect.
it? Here's the thing: unless you believe in a higher power, this ain't gonna work, buddy. Like how does
Yeah,
that work
no,
for you?
yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. If somebody comes in and wants no part of the faith based in the background, I have no
Sure,
problem with that whatsoever, because I can still demonstrate biblical values without attaching a Bible verse to it.
sure,
So it doesn't change. And my end result is, did this person feel cared for? Did they get, quality help, quality mental health help? So it's not about my belief system. Now, some people will come in and say, no, that's just, they'll look at the bio, they'll look at the website and say, that just isn't going to work. They do the screening on
sure,
their own,
sure.
but no, I don't, I'm not going to say I can't see you because I believe, this way. That would be, now we're getting into the ethical weeds.
Sure.
So.
We have a question here, Carol, and it looks like this is from Brad via Carol. Um, what do you counsel end of life folks struggling with unresolved regrets?
What's interesting is we had a similar question come through last October, and my answer was to really make sure that there's nothing left unsaid. Those regrets, we're all going to have regrets as we look back. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
that's human nature. Why did I push that big red button?
yeah.
Why did I do some of the stupid things that I did?
Why
So,
did I hit send on that email?
yeah,
Right.
precisely. Right,
Yeah.
right. So with regrets are the things that you got to own, are the things that you got to be accountable for, that you got to apologize for. I want to go out without any unfinished words, any unfinished sentence. Do the people around me know I love them? Do they know that I care about them? Do they know that, you know, I did what I could to make them feel that way? So that's how you can't undo the past, but you want to make sure there's nothing, left unsaid with end of life stuff. And unfortunately, I hear enough stories where people come in and parents died and they never addressed the elephant in their room. They never addressed the things that were done and said in anger, when they just leave this big open wound. So as much as it depends upon you, say what needs to be said. Love, like your hair's on fire is an expression I've used many
Yeah.
times before.
Mm. That role
So
of parents. I was at a doctor's office. This was many years ago. I can't remember what I was there for. And it was kind of the way out the door. It was, by the way, drink more water, eat better, portions of food, more vegetables, get some exercise. Just some, you know, duh, like everybody should be doing these things. And I was just found it interesting. And I stopped and I'm like, so if everybody did that, what you just said, some simple things, what percentage decrease would like how many fewer people would you actually see? He goes 80%. Now I think that was an exaggeration, not a scientific number, but he basically said if you just do like these four things, if everyone just did this and did it for several years, and that was just your lifestyle, like that's going to actually because those things will lead to gout, high blood pressure, and heart attacks, and all these other things.
mhm.
So it's all not solved, but it would prevent a lot of things if you just followed these basic things. Is that something that would be applicable to mental health? Is there something where, boy, if people just followed these three or four things, it's I don't know how to really phrase that. Like it means you wouldn't have a need to see a mental health professional. But boy, I think a lot of people would be a lot happier if they would just do these, few things. Is it like
Sure.
meditation? Is it talking to parents and reconciling there? What are some of those things? Because I'm assuming parents has to be a big topic. Like a lot of people, and they don't even probably realize they have unresolved issues with their parents. Is that one of those things that they should do?
Well, I'm going to start with the parenting piece. I'll look at this kind of, big picture standpoint. Parents need to parent. Okay. Parenting is a full-time job. Parenting isn't something that you get to just, take a time out because you've had a bad day. Your kids need you, they need instruction, they need discipline, they need they need all that stuff. So parents that don't parent is one of the reasons where we get kids with behavior issues, because parents are not setting boundaries for their kids. They're not consequencing their kids. They're not teaching their kids values like, hey, we respect parents, we respect teachers, we respect coaches. And what does respect look like? They're not teaching them the value of honesty, that, hey, you can't lie and expect that you're going to have, healthy relationships. Are we pushing our kids to do their best? Now, doing their best doesn't mean they get straight A's or B's, but are we demanding that they, live up to their potential? So when parents parent, kids stand out like a beacon of light right now. I mean, you can go in a classroom and you can tell the kids that receive parenting at home versus the ones that don't, just because of their behaviors, So if parents would do that, it would, and see parenting as a privilege. Okay. This with your kids, Ben, that the greatest gift you have in your life is your children.
Amen.
You're not looking at them like they're a pain in the rear end or an annoyance or getting in the way of your ability to have fun. They're a gift, and therefore they're treasured and molded. So yeah, that would significantly decrease the number of kids. From a marriage standpoint, if you want a healthy marriage, don't cheat on your spouse. Okay. I mean, it's not rocket science, but
Darren Cox telling it how it is.
Yeah, I mean, and I've told people, look, people make mistakes. I've helped lots of marriages overcome, a single issue of infidelity through the years. I've helped 0 marriages overcome multiple issues of infidelity. Okay, because they all end up the same. They end up, divorced, or somebody just buries their head in the sand and doesn't want to address the fact that, somebody's committing marital treason. So, marriages. When marriages are other person centered, meaning that your focus as a spouse is, I want to meet my partner's needs. Okay, that my role in this marriage is to identify and meet needs. If couples would do that one thing, I'm going to see a whole lot less, couples counseling.
Really?
But so many times people come in with unmet needs. Okay. And when a need's unmet, then they start to think, well, are my needs not worth being met? Does this person not care? And it leads to, we become a workaholic, we become an alcoholic, we become, whatever we can to try to numb out the fact that we don't feel valued in our relationships. So I always start marriage counseling. It's not about communication. Couples come in all the time and say, we need to learn how to communicate. And I said, well, who taught you to communicate when you were dating? And they're like, well, no one. And I said, well, what did you do differently? Well, I put notes in his lunchbox and underneath his, wiper blade on his car. And we sent text messages and we talked till 2 a.m. And it's like, oh, so you communicated well because you wanted to. So the bigger issue is what's robbed you of your desire to communicate well. Okay. So, but yeah, anyways, go back to the basics of marriage.
Hold on. That's fascinating. That is really fascinating. So let's slow down. So how do you? I mean, isn't there usually like over a period of time, right? The spark is gone, as it were. So you're saying that is almost like more is a choice? Is that what I'm hearing?
Very much so. So people don't, fall in or out of love. They choose to love or they choose not to. Falling, I don't have any control over falling, but I have control of whether or not I'm choosing to love somebody. So I had a guy I met in grad school, and he was from Africa, and he had asked a couple different women to marry him without him really knowing them all that well. And they said no. It wasn't love connection. We weren't watching a game show here where the Bachelor or Bachelorette. And I asked him, I said, hey, what are you doing here? You're kind of, freaking out these, American girls that you're, proposing to right away. And he said, you Americans got this marriage thing all backwards. He said, you guys take a hot bowl of soup and cool it off. I'm looking for a cold bowl of soup that I can heat up over a lifetime. Then what he was referencing is, the investment in the relationship to keep the spark building and growing over time, that he's going to fan that flame. And the longer you're with somebody, and this, you've been married a while, there are mornings you wake up and their hair's a mess, their breath stinks, it's just life together 101. but you choose to love that person. Love's a choice after a while. And when you make that choice, your feelings follow that. What I think people get sideways sometimes is we want to feel our way into changing behavior. It's like, if I
Yes.
feel like it, I'll stop doing this or I'll do more of this. And the truth of the matter is we behave our way into changing our feelings. And that's what people get backwards. So if people focus more on that, again, I got less people that I'm going to see. So there's kids, there's marriages. From an individual standpoint, we get lots of people that are struggling with, depression or anxiety. So we look at lifestyle. And I'll say to people, so tell me what you do to unwind. Tell me what your hobbies are. What do you do that fills your bucket? And there's this, nothing. Okay, so how do you think that contributes to the fact that you're struggling with feeling depressed? Well, I don't know. I never really thought about it. So self-care becomes a big component of a quality of life. The things you do, you fill your bucket. So,
And I'm sure there's healthy things and not healthy things.
well, we don't want to fill our bucket with, Schlitz malt liquor.
Yeah, with meth or something, right? Um, so what are some healthy things?
That people fill their bucket with?
Yeah.
Okay. So they've actually looked at, from a lifespan standpoint, what are factors that influence people that are typically happier? Okay.
Yeah.
Brings them joy. Number one, these are people that regularly activate the pleasure centers of their brain. So they're doing things that make them feel good. So going on a hike, going out for a good meal, time spent with a spouse, physical intimacy. But there's a regular part of their life that, they're really trying to kick off the feel-good chemicals, in the brain. Number two, these people regularly engage in hobbies that enable them to turn their mind off. So say you like to play guitar, all right, and you've been playing guitar for 20 years. If you're stressed out and you sit down and play guitar, you're not thinking where you put your fingers, you're just playing. You've done it enough where you don't have to think about the mechanics behind it. And the next thing you know, if I were to ask you, how's your stress level, it's going to be reduced, not because we fixed anything, not because we changed anything, but because you're in the moment playing guitar. So that could be playing guitar, piano, that could be exercising and running. You talk to a runner and they'll say, yep, if I'm 20 minutes into my run, I'm 20 minutes further away from the stress of the day. Kind of melts as it goes.
Sure.
They regularly engage in those. And then the third thing is they're looking for ways to be able to impact other people. They're trying to give back. They're trying to, help, volunteer, donate time, donate money, but they're trying to have an impact on other people. And when we do that, we take the focus off of ourselves.
Is that significant? About doing this, I mean, the impacts it could have on your mental health by doing things and going on your way to help other people. Is that a significant portion of this? I mean, do people find like a gigantic reward from this?
Absolutely. When we're able to focus on somebody else's needs, it kind of helps put our issues in light in comparison, and it's not to downplay anything, but it does give us a dose of perspective,
Sure.
But those three things, when they're combined over a lifespan, it's contributed to people that are typically happier and healthier.
All right. Let's go back, excuse me, to the parents aspect of this.
Okay.
Is that something that when you meet with people, or maybe just that you're aware of in the mental health profession, where that is a lot of maybe there was a quote unquote good relationship with the parents, but there was some unresolved things, or maybe it wasn't even obvious to them. How much of a role do parents play? Not we're talking about kids up till now, right? Parents' roles with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Your parents are still alive in these scenarios, where you meet with them or you hear about from other mental health professionals talking about it. How much of an impact does being a parent still play for someone in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s? And is it common to find out that, wow, that bad relationship, that's still impacting you in your 50s?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not needed, but it's valued. It has a significant impact. And so think about, going to look at a story in the Bible here. When Jesus was baptized, he was in his 30s. Okay. So he's an adult man. And when John the Baptist baptized Jesus came out of the water. The text says that the A voice came down from heaven where God said, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. He said, "That's my boy." He said, "I love him. I'm proud of him. You really should probably listen to him." So what do we see there from a father to a son, even though he's 30 some years old, is he's validating him.
Hmm.
Okay. He's launching him into his life saying, you got what it takes to be able to make a difference. And so what I tell people sometimes is, as adults, you may have a validation void. You may have parents that never acknowledged what you did, who you are, how you parent. They may have never told you they're proud of you. They may have never told you they love you. They may have never told you they're sorry. So that validation void isn't going anywhere. That's not going to change. But do I live as one who's defined by that, or do I live as one who's been impacted by that? That's my choice. Definition, I'm screwed. This is who I am. Impact, now I'm going to look at the woundedness and how it's changed me and influenced me, but I'm not defined by it. So parents play a key role, whether you're 2 or 60. Okay, because who doesn't want to hear from your dad?
Right.
I'm proud of you. And that doesn't matter whether, again, he's in his 30s and you're a little boy, or he's in his 70s and you're a grown man. That validation is so powerful. And sometimes you have to tell people, look, you're looking for something that you're never going to get from that parent. And so what other ways are you going to validate yourself? So we start looking at, how are you raising your kids? How are you validating your own family? What are you doing to change this legacy? But yeah, I mean, if God did it for Jesus as a 30-year-old, I think that says, look, we all need that as adults, regardless of what age we're at.
You've talked before about the significant connection between fathers and sons. That's specific, not just parents to children. I think that was on a previous show. We had talked about that. For people who didn't see that one, can you kind of recap that, the significance of that relationship between specifically a father and a son?
Trying to remember exactly what we talked about there. I tell what I see in the office is the deepest wounds are the wounds inflicted by dad. Okay. Now, all little boys want to be like their dad. So am I modeling something that my boy should emulate, or am I modeling something that, don't do as I do as I say, type of thing? So you can tell a lot about, what a boy is going to become by looking at what type of environment he was raised in. So that modeling piece becomes, incredibly important. It takes a lot of time to train a boy to be a man. That's not something that he's going to read in a book. I mean, we could go to, who's the Navy SEAL, Jocko, Willink or whatever. We've got that, masculinity on,
Oh,
and
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem with, manhood anymore is it's labeled toxic masculinity. And I struggle with that because it just means that this man is strong. Okay. That this man has, an opinion. This man has a voice. So yeah, I got to be careful. I don't go, too far off into that toxic masculinity piece, but, what's being modeled, what's being demonstrated, how much time does that boy spend with his dad? Back up a generation, boys spent most of their time with their dads, on the farm, working outside. I mean, that was who you spent most of your time with. And as society has changed, our boys have gotten away from that and they spend more time with their peers than they do their dad. And that can obviously, lead to some difficulty as well. So, I think dads and their sons, it has a unique relationship. Dads and their daughters, you can tell women that have had a strong influence by their dad in their life because they feel valued, they feel beautiful, they feel feminine. They've been taken care of. They're, been treated like a princess. So what do they expect when they go look for their own husband? Somebody who treated me like dad did, so.
Well, now we have to talk about toxic masculinity. What is that? I feel like you don't want to talk about it, which is why we have to talk about it now.
Yeah, it's masculinity that's at the expense of other people.
So what does that mean? I mean, give me an example.
A guy who is going to focus on how many women he slept with. That his idea of being a man is, what my number count is. Sure. So we've got a train of people behind that are hurt. toxic masculinity is how tough you are, how many people you can
I
beat
see.
up.
I see.
So rather than true masculinity, godly masculinity, I call it tender fierceness. You're tender with those that matter to you most, but you're fierce with those that would jeopardize the things that matter to you most.
That's good.
So the iron marshmallow is another way of looking at it. Your
Iron
family,
marshmallow.
yeah, the family and friends get to see the soft side, but anybody that would potentially hurt those that matter to you get the iron side.
This is gold.
Yeah. So, all free too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You should come on every week. And yeah. Hey, real quick, I know we're already getting close to our time. We just had an election. I think I saw the story right before the presidential election. Well, the election back in November, that some colleges were letting people know they didn't have to go to school the next day. They said on Tuesday they instructed the professors do not give any homework, and on Wednesday nobody's required to go to school in the college. And then the following day, if you need another day, because they didn't know who won at that point, right? What are your thoughts about that? About colleges or schools saying, well, in this case specifically, there were some colleges. Is that healthy? Is that a good idea? Or is that a bad idea?
You want my filtered answer or my politically correct answer?
Your
Or
the former.
the unfiltered answer.
Yeah.
I think you create a generation of kids that are soft.
I thought so too.
When you do that. Okay. Yes, we can be disappointed depending upon our political view,
Sure.
but that doesn't mean I pull the covers over my head and shut my life down and wake me up when it's over. Going back to, biblical insight, God appoints leaders. Okay. And these are sometimes good leaders, sometimes bad leaders. This is written in the book of Romans, and trust me, the Roman leaders back then were awful. So do I trust what I don't understand? Do I trust God's sovereignty, which is about his goodness in the midst of these things? But yeah, to give somebody a day off. I have family members that are completely split because nobody will answer the question of who did you vote for? It's not picking one side or the other. It's simply, I'm not going to tell you who I voted for.
Wow.
Well, fine, I'm not talking to you anymore. It's like, come on, in 4 years, we're going to be up for another election cycle.
Yeah.
Is this what we're going to do every time? And so yeah, I think it just makes people soft to answer your question.
I kind of felt so too. Really, like I'm not going to go to work tomorrow. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of, or have you heard a lot of in your profession about adults coming in a little bit more, or maybe it was, hey, we sent out this mental health profession newsletter to everybody saying, here's how you should handle this for people who are coming in regarding the election. Was that a thing?
Yeah, I didn't see much of that other than what I read on the news.
Sure.
So of course there's memes of people losing their mind and screaming fest, whatever else. And again, people have strong opinions. I'm not trying to discount those opinions one way or the other, but Wednesday rolls around, we got life to get back to. So
yeah. On that note, we had Spooner Health CEO Mike Schaefer on the show a couple of days ago, and I'd asked him about, because the election's finished, and then President-elect Trump announced nominees for certain things, and one of them was RFK Jr. for DHS, I believe. And I'd asked him, does DHS play a role in like his field of healthcare? So I'm wondering the same thing about you. Does it matter from the mental health care profession, who's the governor of Wisconsin? If Republicans or Democrats are the ones that have the majority in the legislature, who the president is, do these things impact your profession at all?
Not really. It's, you can see the pendulum swing a little bit from more liberal issues to conservative issues depending upon who is in office. But as far as like policy dictating what we do, how we do it, when we do it, not really. There was some policy changes that came out with the No Surprises Act, and that was people were getting dropped with, well, it's like if you go to a hospital, you didn't know what the cost was going to be, and then you got surprised with this big gigantic bill. So A couple years back, they passed what's called the No Surprises Act. And now when somebody comes in who doesn't have insurance, we have to give them a written estimate up front of what the costs are going to be.
Oh,
So, that has provided, another layer of paperwork, another process that we, have to follow. Mike mentioned Medicaid reimbursement rates. We don't turn anybody away based upon insurance either, but, Medicaid is, 30 to 40% less than what, standard private health insurance pays. So you have
so
to,
that's
from a business
similar.
standpoint.
Oh,
Oh
so what
yeah,
Mike was talking about on Tuesday, that also was applicable
yep,
to your profession. I did not know that.
absolutely. Yep. And we can't negotiate that rate. It's the take it or leave it. Here you go.
Oh, weird.
Yep. So we have to pay attention to, what we call the payer mix, who's bringing, what insurance in and how does that, influence your bottom line. But it never
Sure.
stops us from who we see. But, bottom line is Medicaid pays the least of any insurance out there.
Oh.
So,
You said you've been doing this since 2001. What is that, 23, 24 years?
mhm.
Um, Burnout ever hit your profession? I mean, burnout, and maybe that's the wrong term, but everybody knows what I'm talking about, I think, when I say burnout, where you just kind of hit a, whatever. Uh, did you experience that at all? And if so, how'd you overcome that? Is it common in your profession? I think it's going to happen in everybody's profession if you stay at something long enough.
Mhm.
But how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? I think we've all been driving down the road, and then all of a sudden we kind of snap out of it and realize, holy cow, I do not remember driving the last 10 minutes. Hopefully, I didn't run over a dog and run through some stoplights. And obviously, you can't have that when you're having a client in front of you. Yeah, that was really great what you said for the last 5 minutes. Why don't you say it again to really hit it home?
Because I was
Jeez.
listening. Yeah,
Right.
well, that's bad. That's very bad when you're in session and do that. So
Yeah,
no, caregiver burnout is very real,
I would think
very
so.
real. Yeah, because I had a colleague one time very eloquently say that we work in the mud. Okay, we're dealing with difficult things, and when you're in the mud, sometimes you yourself get dirty. You wear it, you cover it. So I do something like my yearly budget is based upon me working 11 months out of the year rather than 12. Why?
Smart.
Because I'm going to take a month off during the year, so I don't even budget for that. That's just
Smart.
that's a given. That's what we're going to do. Um, I always have things in front of me on the calendar that I'm looking forward to. So if you go from year to year to year, you'll see, every, first week in November, I take that off for bow hunting. Every third week in December, I'm on Upper Red Lake ice fishing. This spring, my wife and I are going to Myrtle Beach. So I always have something out in front of me to look forward to.
Sure.
So even if it's bad, it's like, oh, it's only 3 more weeks until
I
vacation.
see.
The other thing is just being, self-aware. Like if I start getting short with people, I got in an argument one time with a guy at Economart. I wasn't done putting my groceries on the conveyor belt, and he was jamming his behind me, and I kind of barked at him. And I'm thinking, dude, you're in Economart. You're a licensed professional counselor in this community, and you're arguing over the fact his loaf of bread got too close to your gallon of milk. It's like, you need a break, dude.
Yeah, yeah. Here's your
So
sign.
that type of stuff tells me I'm fried. I need to get
Yeah.
away. So
And how do you fill your cup? What are your hobbies? The things that you had mentioned earlier. What do
yeah.
you do?
Primarily, it's time with family. Over Thanksgiving break, all my adult kids came home, and I we were teased as being Amish because the kids didn't have cell phones until they were much later in life. And so when they came home, we were all sitting around the kitchen table playing board games. That's what we do for fun around the house. So time with kids, time with my wife. 26 years later, we still enjoy each other's company. She's my sounding board. She's the one that I think kind of helps keep me grounded and just in a good place emotionally. Spirituality for me is important too. What does God say about the issue that I'm dealing with? God doesn't ask me what I feel. He asks me what's true. And I have to focus on that from time to time as well, because my feelings can take me, sideways. But so yeah, those relationships, and then of course my hobbies. Those are what I
Hunting,
fill my
fishing.
bucket with.
Yeah. And
Yep.
you go around some places on Sunday every once in a while, don't you?
I do. I've actually been doing quite a bit of, pulpit supply, fill-in preaching. Now I'm on a 6-week, every 6 weeks I preach at Hope Community Church down in Cumberland with Pastor Paul Green.
Wow.
So,
What's
so
it
that's
called?
where I've
Hope.
been.
Hope what?
Hope Community Church.
Hope Community. Never heard of it.
Yeah.
Every 6 weeks you go down. Are you
Yeah.
given like here's what we're talking about today, or is it just like a one-off thing, or are you part of like a series and it's like, all right, well, when you come on, you're picking up here where we left off.
Yeah. So Pastor Paul preaches book by book, verse by verse. So it's
Love it.
really easy just to join where he's
Yeah.
at, So, hey, you get Romans 8 this week, and I know exactly what the passage is. So
Yeah.
it's not, topical. But being a mental health therapist, I got, 25 years of anecdotes. I got all these stories and examples of, hey, don't do this. That don't work real well.
Yeah. Don't have
or do
affairs
this.
on your significant other. Right.
Correct.
It's
Right.
kind of a no-brainer.
Right.
What is the
Yep.
state of you go down to that church? Church is different. It's not like it was when I was young. And matter of fact, we don't even go to church. We do a Sunday Bible study here with our family, and I get so much out of that. It's like an hour and a half long. It's just brilliant. I'm not saying people shouldn't go to church. Certainly go, just because of the fellowship and other people, and et cetera. But what do you think overall, kind of the state of the church is right now, the evangelical church right now? Because it seems like it isn't going as well, and maybe there's more people that are leaving. It seems to be the trend there. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, we live in a day and age where the failings of pastors that used to be private are now public. So what used to never make the internet or news because we didn't have access to those things like we do, now you hear about it regularly, which I think can kind of flavor what the overall, health of the church is. So what I'm seeing is there are some churches that are drifting away from biblical principles, primarily the inerrancy of Scripture. When we talk about inerrancy, it's that this is God's truthful word that He's given to us from generation to generation, and that's the book that we should live by. So some churches are veering from that, and anytime you do that, you're kind of heading into some murky waters theologically. Okay, when you start to change the message to make people feel good rather than
that seems to be a common thing. Like a lot of the people I
does.
see on TV, and there's I can't remember the one who's really popular, Tim or Cheapers.
Joel Osteen.
That's the one.
Yeah, Smiling Joel.
Yeah, Smiling. And it's if you watch that, it's like I feel fantastic. Not challenged at all, but that seems to be a very popular thing. And I kind of feel as though the few churches I have gone to in the last 10 years, it seems to be echoed in some of the local churches as well. And, it's fine, I guess, ish, but it's not what I remembered. But maybe I'm just getting, to be a fuddy-duddy as I get older.
Well, God's word is timeless, people change, His word doesn't. And those are things that, I think we need to, keep in mind. When I'm up front, I have to remind myself, I'm not there to entertain. I don't have to make God relevant. God is relevant regardless of whether He uses me or not. And it's like if I'm nervous before I go on, I have to remind myself again, I'm irrelevant. This is about Him, not me. So when pastors focus on keeping the main thing, and the main thing with Christianity is Jesus. It's the power of salvation, the power of forgiveness to change a person's life. And when churches focus on that, they do fine. They will always do fine. Jesus is the head of the church, not man. And as long as we focus on Him, that's what keeps people on the right path. It's when they get away from that, I want to make somebody feel good. I want to, puff them up, and turn it into a self-help series rather than biblical instruction that we get into trouble.
Well, that's when my Christianity changed around because I've obviously being raised by my mom and dad. My mother's an amazing Christian. I believed in God. I've always had faith, but I didn't really live a Christian life for most of my life. And when I moved back up here like 9-10 years ago, again, it was still, I never really called myself a Christian. It was just, I believe in God and all that jazz. But it was when I started doing these Bible studies and I started realizing that I completely missed the boat on Jesus. It was always God. So when I started getting to that, oh my goodness, did everything start changing for me. So I completely understand what you're saying, because that's where it's at. And that's what I'm still working on, is that I'm still trying to figure out the whole, guilt and shame thing. I can't seem to kick that one, because Satan loves to remind me of all that stuff. And I know I give it to God, but boy, I still struggle with that. We've had some great comments in here. Rick, and they had said, I find you so encouraging. This is from Jody. Just what I needed today. Darren is the best. Thank you for your encouragement. We'll leave it with one last question here, is how do you counsel atheists facing eternity? So I'm assuming this wouldn't be like in a session, right? Based on what you had said earlier.
You cut out on me, Ben. Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
No problem. I was just saying the question. I don't think this is necessarily, based on what you said earlier, you don't bring this up like in a session with someone, right? I think this would be just more
what I can say is, tell me your understanding of what happens after a person dies.
Uh-huh.
And, is it, like you're done, you're out, you cease to exist? Is there, your understanding of an afterlife? How does a person get there? I mean, I'm going to ask a series of questions, because if they ask me questions in return, like, what do you believe? Well, now I have an open door to be able to, share some things. But, everybody, when they come to the end of life, is going to wonder what's next. Okay. As a follower of Jesus, I got the answer for you of what's next. And I want to show them the answer. I want to point them to the answer, but I can't just go barging in. So with an atheist, they don't have a belief system. They don't believe in God. And it's harder to try to find to inroad there. But facing end of life, that's going to be pretty, unsettling without an understanding, at least a personal understanding of what happens next.
Yeah, I think it kind of starts with, like, there's two components there. One, you have to believe in the creator, not God. Just the first step is you have to look at it just logically. Okay, nothing comes from nothing. So I think we start just looking at it just logically, because I'm not kidding. That's literally how I did it when I got older. I mean, I always believed in God, but then when I started going, but why do I believe in God? I think it was just how I was raised. I remember calling my mom and saying, I feel horrible because I'm questioning if God, is real. And she said, no, that's good, right? You absolutely should. Now seek out the answers. Right. But for me, it was really just logical. Nothing comes from nothing. So even if, the atoms and this and all that stuff, well, that comes from something, because atoms are based on material, and material are finite, or based on matter, and that's finite. It all comes from something, and nobody can answer that. So if you just look at it from just law of averages, or the probabilities, I should say, it's actually much more likely, and we could talk about this for an hour, but it's actually much more likely that there is a creator, because everything has a purpose, right? And we can't figure out where our conscious is, of course. Science can't figure that out. So that it really did, when I figured it out logically, that, wow, it makes not just more sense, but it's much more likely that there was a creator than this was all just random. Then it came to, who's the creator? That was my next step. And then I realized when I was looking into it, holy cow, like all the other religions or belief systems kind of all stemmed from the Bible and from God. That was like that's the OG of faith. And it's, that kind of makes sense now too. So honestly, I just applied logic, and that's how it helped me. Yeah. But again, people can believe what they want to believe. I don't care. But that certainly was an eye opener for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's harder with, going back to the question with somebody that, is an atheist when they come to that point. So,
yeah. And sometimes do they really want to know, or is it just more of an argument? And you kind of have to figure that out too. Right. Awesome.
But Jesus can save me on day one as well as the last day, and that's the cool thing about salvation. So I wonder how many people at that, last moment make a cry out to God. So,
well, see, you heard it right here. Darren Cox says you can do whatever you want. Just make sure on your deathbed.
Nope, I did not say that. You're the one that referred to God as the original gangster. So let's come on.
I didn't actually say it. I just said OG. Special thank you to our guest today, mental health professional and owner of Anchor Bay Counseling, Darren Cox, for coming on to chat with us. As a reminder, Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back this Tuesday for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.